doing that. But what happens when you push the button?
Okay. Make sure you turn your mics on.
Doesn't react.
Yeah, that one's not working.
Just stay with it.
Okay. Just hold the button down.
She always wanted to do it.
Okay, everybody ready?
Go to unison.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Logan-Cache Airport Authority Board. And welcome. Glad to have you all here today. We're going to have a great meeting. Our first action item is approval of our minutes from our June 5th meeting. And I would entertain a motion, or if anybody has any.
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on approval of the minutes. Are there any points of discussion or additions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you, that's unanimous. That brings us to number 3 on our agenda, which are reports. And we have a few reports. We'll start with Casey, filling in for Bob today for our manager's report. Casey?
Well, I'm going to be here today, so I will be in his place giving the manager's report. Got a few things that have happened in June. First off, we have purchased a crack seal machine from the county, and it's supposed to be delivered sometime this week or next, and we'll get some training on it. And this will help us with our upkeep of our pavement between funding cycles from the state and the FAA. Currently, pavement preservation isn't scheduled until next summer for Taxiway Bravo, so we'd like to be able to use that machine to fill in some cracks and keep the pavement looking good until then. We've also started our airport management software implementation. That software is called AeroSimple. We purchased this software in order to better run our Part 139 operations. Last year, when our Part 139 inspector came to town, he made a couple recommendations as far as keeping track of inspections and work orders on the airport. And we had been putting together a system on Google Sheets, but that just wasn't really working for us. So we decided to purchase this software, and it keeps track of everything electronically for us. And we believe it's going to be a big help for us. Our snowblower, last winter a gear failed inside the gearbox of the snowblower that took it down completely. And when we took it to the mechanic, they told us that we can either use a gear out of a snowblower that's 40 years old, or we can have a brand new one machined. So we opted to have a brand new one machined. It's currently being made down in Texas, and we're expecting it to be back to us, the snowblower and the gear back to us before this winter. And finally, we've gotten word that a property owner to the east of the airport on the other side of the railroad tracks is getting ready to sell his property. He has a culvert that runs underneath the railroad tracks from his property to our property. Currently, that culvert is clogged. So they're working with the railroad to get that culvert cleared. And when that culvert gets cleared, we're expecting a lot more water flow into the canals and ditches at the airport. So our plan to mediate that is to purchase some, or not purchase, but rent some heavy equipment to clear all of our ditches and canals on the airport property. We're not aware of the last time this was done, so we think that would be a really great idea to help water flow better, prevent flooding, and not only that, but we have a lot of reeds and cattails growing up in these canals, and they're a big wildlife attractant. The ducks and the birds love to seek cover in those areas.
So are those irrigation canals, or are they ditches that have been constructed at the airport?
I believe they're irrigation canals.
So doesn't the irrigation company have to clear them? Not us?
Being that it's on our property, I'm not completely sure how that works.
I would be careful to contact the irrigation company.
Okay.
Because they should be doing maintenance on those canals,
Okay,
and we shouldn't have to pay for it.
okay.
pay for it,
Okay.
unless they work some deal out with you guys.
Okay.
But does the culvert go, I mean, so that the ditch that it feeds into is lower elevation than the other side?
I believe it. I can't answer that question with any certainty. All I know from what Bob has told me, Bob has been dealing with this, is that the culvert runs from their property under the railroad tracks to ours, and then enters our ditch and culvert system on the airport. I don't know if our side is lower elevation, allowing the water to run naturally, or if it's kind of an overflow or a runoff
Oh, okay.
for during heavy moisture times.
But I would definitely check with the canal company.
Okay.
Because I think that in part that's their responsibility.
Okay. It would seem to me like it's possibly irrigation because it has water in it that's flowing all summer long. So it goes somewhere. It doesn't just, end at the airport.
Well, I would think the farmers that are using that water would be happy to not be feeding the weeds
Oh, I'm sure.
with
And,
your water.
and we would be happy to get the weeds out of that culvert system that we have.
Okay.
So I will look into that, and we'll see where we go from there. That's about all I have for the manager's report. Is there any other questions from the board on that?
Any questions from board members?
Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, no, actually, you bring up a really good point, and that's not something that I have thought of. Maybe Bob has thought of it, but I will bring that up to him.
Okay, thank you so much, Casey. Appreciate the report, and thanks for filling in for Bob today.
Thank you.
That brings us next to a report on the Cache Air Fest. And I just want to start by saying, wow, thank you. It was amazing.
Appreciate all the success we had. There was a huge effort that went into this, multi-years in the planning. Baron Wiesman, I guess you'd say the chair of this committee that we had, that started out larger and shrunk over time, but for those that stayed with us to the end, it was phenomenal. So a few special thanks. We want to thank Cache Valley Electric for being our premier sponsor. Also that the Spring Hill Marriott provided hotel for our performers, and Wilson Ford helped provide a vehicle. But a big shout out to Leading Edge and his crew. It was amazing the work that they put in, providing the manpower, helping out with the ground. We had some great performers. It was unbelievable. Forgive me that I didn't have a lot of slides and lessons learned. Our committee hasn't met yet because this just happened a couple of days ago. But we'll have those for you to make sure you get a better accounting of what we did. But I just want to say thank you to the board. Friday night we had a hangar event. Nancy Potter gave this wonderful presentation that you're going to see here. We had 172 plus in attendance. There was live music with the Cache Valley Big Band. We gave out the annual awards for Division of Aeronautics, gave out the awards for the art contest we had, and plus we got to meet the performers. And so it was a fantastic event. Just a couple highlights for everybody that we know the feedback. Everybody kept saying, are we going to do this again next year? Absolutely not. We're not going to compete against Hill Air Force Base. We're going to do it in 2 years. So right now, that is our proposal, and we want to stay in the preparation mode right now. So a couple of things that we did acknowledge. The biggest critique we had was the parking. We appears that the sign for 10th West wasn't there, and so it wasn't telling people to turn left. So everybody was turning right. And then because we had twice as many as we expected. Estimates are over 7,000, and so that was our biggest challenge, was being able to park vehicles. So we've got some ideas of how to mitigate that in the future. We had great success with getting the Cache Valley Cruise in out there. We had a STEM fair. We had a lot of events, a lot of things for people to do. But the aerial demonstrations is what really drew people in. And so we've got some ideas. Just want to thank law enforcement for being very flexible, getting out onto the road. When they called me up and I said, I don't want to be out there, let's get those folks out there. And they started moving traffic along. But in the end of the day, they were parked along the road in 2500 West. That's how popular this event was. A couple things that we do want to highlight is that, we want to make sure that we look into doing this in the future. So we found out very short notice the mass gathering permit and some of the other paperwork and forms that are new that weren't here 10 years ago. So now that we have that, it's going to be a lot smoother for the preparation, and we'll be able to prepare for it far in advance. But one thing that is the unfinished business is we're still looking to support. We didn't quite get all the donations. And so there's 9 members of the board, and if every one of you gets a couple $1,000, $9,000 from your friends and everybody, we could finish paying some of the bills that we have. In all seriousness, that was the one thing, our finance person had been hospitalized, and so we were a little bit short in trying to get some of that. So that is the one bit of business for here. And so last time I wasn't as bold as to come to request that the Airport Authority Board help provide some support to help fill in the gap for some of those expenses. So between the porta potties, paying law enforcement, paying for some of those other events, those support structures on the ground did cost. Again, the mass gathering permit, there was a lot of those things that we didn't anticipate because we didn't know until a few weeks before the event.
Did the airport provide any financial assistance?
So right now, Bob Lowe, he ordered the porta potties as part of his budget, and I don't know the other expenses. He's not. The dumpsters, that's right. The dumpsters, the porta potties, and right now we got a bill from the law enforcement and some of those other areas. Those are the immediate ones. And then just make sure we had to order some extra oil. There's a special oil for those big radial engines, and so leading edge right now is on the hook for a lot of those other expenses that came up.
What's your best estimate for how much is still needed?
So about $9,000 is where we are. If anybody donates $3,000, there is an upset recovery, upside down aerobatic flight available. We'll sponsor you for that. So that's the carrot. A super decathlon.
Can we pick who goes in that?
That's the idea. Yes, it's like a dunk tank. Who do you want to have throw up in an airplane? So, we appreciate it. I just want to be very honest with you that, some of those expenses at the end were unexpected and they came through, and of course the price of oil and some of those other things. But, so we've got about a month that we're trying to finish up the reconciliation on some of those expenses. And that's where you are. But Cache Valley Electric came through with a big donation. So Brett Hoogie is the one board member who's fulfilled his obligation.
So, Baron, I just want to make a suggestion that you can throw out to your committee. Perhaps next year or the 2 years, you could arrange something with Cache Valley Transit so that they would bring people to the airport and you wouldn't have as many parking at the airport.
Right. Our proposal, it's $25 to park on the abandoned runway, and it's free if you go to Bridgeland and we bus you to the airport. That's one proposal that came out there. We also didn't have a plan to be able to park next to the abandoned runway in the dirt. There's some areas that could have happened. And so we weren't ready and willing to make that change right away. But that's something we had talked to Bob Lowe about, that, we could look at that in the future to be able to have more vehicles there. But we were just overwhelmed. It was, that's a positive challenge to have. But thank you for that input. I think we're looking at a couple of different ideas. But right now we want to plan this fall to reorganize the Cache Valley Aviation Association to make sure that that's up and running properly to start fundraising. And so by January of this next year, we'll start the fundraising in advance. So that one of the limitations was because some of the delays of getting approval, we weren't able to have our marketing materials with the sponsors on it. And so we'll do that next time. That may be a little bit better carrot. But I was on the radio, KUTV, KSL. There was a lot of good publicity. Maybe too much good publicity.
Success to make you have to rethink everything, huh?
No. But we are looking for some more folks around the committee. But like I said, we've got a volunteer to help out with our finances. So, and so we're excited about getting that going. So we'll have a little bigger committee this time and start a little bit. I know we've been working on this for 10 years, but we're excited to be here. Any final questions from the board?
If somebody wants to donate, how do they do that?
So right now, we're going to be going through the Bear River, the Bragg. So Sean Milne has set up that we can use the same nonprofit that helped with the Napoleon Dynamite Festival, but they can go to Sean Milne and he'll be able to get those donations in the tax-free.
Bragg Foundation, it will not be written to me.
Right, correct. The Bragg, that's what's saying Bragg, the Bear River Alliance Group or something there.
I can get a sponsor of the naming.
I think we ought to put that in our minutes, or always put it on our website. I think that was a great event. I think there's lots of people that would probably like to support that if they knew maybe a way to do that.
Yep. And the last thing is again, the highlight of having the Friday night event the evening before and coming up the next day. And a big shout out, Mike Logan was a big part of this. Who saw the Agitron out there? So that was a hit. It was the first time they'd taken it off campus, but having that big screen with the big mic out there and the audio visual out there was really nice. It helped highlight everything. Again, I had to leave. I was only there in the morning for setup and then went to Salt Lake City, so I was not able to be there. But I tell you that we've got some ideas about next year, making sure we're better prepared on some of the just 2 years. Thank you, 2 years. Next time, I'm already thinking a year in advance, but we're gonna have a good time. But I just want to thank everybody for all the support. And again, if we are just a way for us to have the Airport Authority Board maybe cover some of those airport expenses, and then if we we all have a different circle of influence and ability to help get this support and let the folks know that this is something that's great for the community, brings attention to the airport, and it really helps us understand the relationship that this airport has with the members. But seeing all the kids out there and seeing the pictures people sent was phenomenal. Any final questions from the board? That concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Baron.
And I'll have another report in probably September once we get all the after action done and to close out things. Thank you.
So David, do we have the ability to amend our budget to put some support toward that?
Yeah, I think, let's check and see if we can get some donations, but if not, I think that would be appropriate for us to help out.
Yes, I do.
I was going to mention too, so I know before the fact, sometimes you can ask for donations or sponsorships, and then you can see their logo in a banner or some prevalent place. Is there an opportunity if someone's willing to donate that their logo or something would be there 2 years from now as listed as a sponsor?
No, you'd have to do it twice.
Does Jeannie speak for?
That's the way fundraising works, right, Val?
I think you make a good point, Keegan, that one of the things that you offer to a donor is some kind of exposure at the event. And considering that the event is over now, we'd have to have a way to do that, give them something, so.
And certainly we could do it on the website
Absolutely.
presently.
Yeah.
Well, the radio also said that they would be willing to give a shout out to anybody that donates. So we get some radio publicity for that. We did the Cache Valley Daily.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. So, okay, we have an assignment as a board then to help find some donations, and if not, I think we need to step up. Thank you so much. Thanks again to everybody who helped with that. What a wonderful event. And it was interesting, you know how your phone pops up with old pictures. The week of the air show, my phone popped up with pictures from 10 years ago when I took my boys to the air show. And I can't believe it had been a decade since we've done that, but it's great to have it back. I look forward to having it back every 2 years now. That brings us now to the next item on our agenda, which is a report on airport projects from Lochner Engineering Firm. Connor?
Yeah, good morning. Connor Butterfield with Lochner. So yeah, the Taxiway Charlie project, we're going to be advertising for bids next week, starting Thursday. So we will open the bids on July 25th. So by next board meeting, hopefully we'll have quite a few bids in hand and know which contractor to do the work for the reconstruction of Taxiway Charlie.
Will you give a brief overview of the scope? What exactly
Yeah,
is
so as we know, Taxiway Charlie's pretty much gravel at this point. It's unable to be plowed in the winter. So we're going to rehab. It's a portion, kind of the end where it ties into the runway, and then back about 1,400 feet. So that'll be repaved back into a usable pavement surface. It's also going to narrow down to 25 feet to meet the current aircraft standards for that runway, 10.28. So yeah, just rehabbing the pavement.
So will we excavate down a certain distance?
Yeah, it's how the project's going to go. We're going to pulverize the existing pavement surface, pulverize that, and then use it as a base course to pave on top of. So that ideally it saves cost. It minimizes the amount of excavation and embankment required for the project. So it should be the most cost-effective way to do the project.
Okay, thank you.
And then with SRE equipment is the other project. So that is being reviewed by the FAA right now. We sent the specifications for the truck to be acquired. Looking like it'll be a 10-wheel dump truck with a front plow and a wing plow attached. So we should have FAA comment within the next week or two. And then same thing, we'll go out to bid on that. I've talked to various companies. Some are hopeful that we could get it by January, which would be awesome. So we have it this winter to use it to plow snow. With that, I talked with the FAA, and they require a 1-year warranty on any work when they fund it. Some of the manufacturers, speaking to them, they offer like a 3, 5, or 7-year warranty. That would not be FAA eligible, but we could put it in as a separate schedule if the board thinks it's a wise choice. So I could lay out the different warranty options. One of them was a 7-year warranty, and it was $6,800. I think that would be a wise choice, and that covers. It wasn't bumper to bumper, but it was engine, emissions, and maybe transmission. So we could lay that out in the project, but just knowing that that would be additional warranty is local funds only.
Does it cover hydraulics?
I'll check on that as well. I can do a deeper dive, but just figured I'd bring it to the attention if that's something you'd like to explore.
Sounds like a good deal. I think it's likely we'd have a repair of that cost in that time frame.
Okay.
So SRE is snow removal equipment.
Oh, yes, sorry, snow removal equipment for the airport.
So in talking to the manufacturers, if we have funding available in January, would they have a truck available in January?
So the funding, we will go out to bid in August, and then the procurement time, they're saying they could have it ready in January.
That's where January comes from, is when the manufacturers
Yeah.
deliver.
Yes.
Okay,
So
great.
that's a hopeful timeline. I'm talking with 3 different manufacturers, and one of them said that they could have it as early as January. So
Nice.
that was hopeful. And then Taxi Lane Kilo is the new taxi lane that's being developed at the airport. That is going out to review to the FAA next week, and then we will be posting it for advertising for bidding in July, late July. So the biggest holdup on those projects, it was a lesson learned for me. I contracted with a subconsultant for survey work. They were on site April 10th, and we're supposed to, typically you get survey back in about a week. And so I gave it a week and nothing. So then I started following up with emails every week thereafter. Didn't get the final survey until June 12th.
Oh my God.
So we had a quick turnaround on our 2 Taxi Lane Kilo and Charlie projects because they were waiting for that survey. So we were able to get it done quickly, but it was just a subconsultant there on my behalf I probably should have selected somebody else. They were a local company, and just had a lot of issues there, but the ball's rolling in the right direction now. So lastly, the PAPI project. So I got the environmental clearance to do the work, so we're good from an environmental standpoint to move the PAPI control units. That was part of an issue on your 139 inspection. The inspector found that they were in an inappropriate place on the airfield. They need to be moved 120 feet. I've reached out to Cache Valley Electric to get a rough cost estimate, and they're anywhere from $75,000 to $125,000. They don't know exactly all what's required. So my question to the board is, could we fund that locally, or could the Utah State potentially help fund this? It would expedite the process of getting the work done, because then you wouldn't have to go out to competitive bid. I've reached out to Brett Hugie. Unfortunately, haven't gotten a hold of him, but that's just a question. If we could do it that way, I would propose it. I think that would be a quicker move if it could be funded locally.
Any thoughts from board members on that?
I'm a supporter of competitive bids, so I'm not sure that I think if you're looking to skip the competitive bid process, I'm actually a supporter of that. So from my end, I've seen a lot of times that I can bid out engineering or electrical work, and And based on who's busy and what, that price can significantly vary. So,
Valid. Yeah.
anyway, that's my,
John, were you going to say something?
My recollection is that moving of the power supply for the PAPI was included in the discussions with the university as part of the projects that they were going to be participating in.
Okay.
Yeah, so we may already have that funding contributed from.
That's what I thought that was,
Yeah.
my recollection was the same, but I just haven't confirmed that with, would Brett be the best person to reach out to regarding that?
Yeah, he negotiated that and has those details.
Okay.
Bob should have it as well.
Okay,
And the mayor should know as well.
Yeah, Mayor Daines may as well.
okay. Well, I can follow up on that as well. And then if we would like to go out for competitive bids, we could do that, or I know Cache Valley is interested and could get it done quickly. Is kind of the trade-off there.
We need to make sure that we follow any purchasing policies.
Okay.
What's the amount? talking about?
Again, it was a rough estimate between 75 and 125,000. That was just
Yeah, I think
ballpark. So
something of that amount, the purchasing policy would require that we go out to bid.
okay, that makes sense. Any other questions as far as projects at the airport or for me?
Master plan.
Master plan is in review at the FAA. Yes, they are reviewing it. That's what was presented at the public meeting. They made a few minor tweaks. They added a fuel system by the USU hangar, but I believe I sent that to David recently. But that was the only tweak from the public since it was just on display for the public, and then it's been in the FAA's hands since. So.
In a discussion earlier this week, a question was raised about the narrative portion of the master plan and how the process for identifying the future expectations for the plan. Is that narrative available for advance review by board members or anyone else of interest?
I don't see why it wouldn't be. I can ask our planning department and see if I can have that sent your way for review.
If you'd check on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The drawings, the exhibits get all the attention, but the real meat is in the narrative.
Correct. Yeah, I'll check and then I can send that. Who would be the best to send that to?
If you send that to Janine, she
Then she can disseminate?
distribute it to the entire board. And if you'll all look for that when you get that email from Janine. Thank you for bringing that up, John. I just want to make sure that our board looks at what this plan says and that we're on board with the vision that's laid forth in this plan. If not, then we need to change it. If there are things that we want to be in there that aren't in there that we envision for our airport, then let's add them. Or if it's saying something that isn't our vision, then we need to take it out. So I just want to make sure that our board is in alignment with that narrative. So if you'll all read it.
So if it's already gone to the FAA, then if we read it and we want to change it, then it has to go back through the whole cycle, correct? The public hearing and all that stuff?
I don't know how much of the steps it'll have to go through, but
Because I'm surprised that we didn't have it first.
yeah, that would have been a better flow, but we still need to look at it and make sure it's in alignment with what we want.
I am uncertain if it would have to go back to the public, but it would have to go back to the FAA for review if we made revisions. I know that, so I can check.
Is there a reason why we didn't see it ahead of time?
I don't know that. Again, I'm sorry. I'm more on the engineering, not the planning side, but I believe it should have been made available. I know that there was several meetings and discussions with the TAC, the advisory committee for the master plan,
Right.
and I believe it should have been discussed there. I wasn't.
The only thing I saw at the public hearing or the public meeting was just the drawings. I
Okay.
didn't see any narrative.
Yeah, and I requested the PDFs from you a little while ago, and thanks for sending those, but I don't know if I ever saw the narrative portion.
Yeah, we'll get the rest of that out. It's a really big file, everything, so it's a little challenging to share, but we'll get it to everybody. But yeah, I asked Judd that same question, Jeannie, and he said it was worked on by the TAC, and I think that was the assumption that was made, was that the TAC was maybe acting or speaking on behalf of the board.
Was
But
that the role that we gave them?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't remember having that discussion or what that discussion was. Nevertheless, we need to make sure we look at it and that we're okay with it. And maybe we'll all look at it and say it sounds great and we don't have any changes. But I just want to make sure that everybody looks at it and that it's not saying something that isn't part of our vision, or not leaving something out that is part of our vision.
Okay.
What was the acronym, TAC or TAG?
The Technical Advisory Committee. There was a Technical Advisory Committee, and I can't remember who was on that. There were some board members on it, right?
That's what I was gonna ask, is if there's a board member who's
Well, I
a
know John
liaison
was
that
on,
can report back.
John, weren't you on it?
I was there and Brett was there. Mom was included. Were you?
Later, I participated in some, but I don't know that I was actually a committed member, but I did participate.
So might have just been an oversight.
That's, yeah, typically we have that advisory committee to make these decisions on behalf of the board. But, so I don't know exactly how that was discussed, but that's typically how these go. You put together a committee,
Okay.
and that's when the reviews are done. So, sorry, I'm not a wealth of knowledge on that one, but.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big project, and let's just make sure at this point that everybody looks at it and we're okay with it.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate the updates. All right, that brings us down to number 4 on our agenda, special interest and discussion items. And I'm really looking forward to the next item. And thank you, Nancy Potter, for being here. She's going to give us a presentation about the history of the Logan-Cache Airport. And would you come forward, please, Nancy?
She found herself she's like a new expert. Great.
Well, I can start with, it's an honor to be here. It was an honor to be there for the aviation night for USU. Our family loved the airport. We grew up at the airport. Talk about a wonderland for a kid. The cold Quonset huts that they used to have from the war, during World War II, they had Quonset huts. We hung out in those, a lot of bees in there, but we played in those. We played in the tower. My grandpa's office was in the bottom floor of the tower, and then the upper part was where he observed. And so it's a place that our family really enjoyed. One thing we loved, my dad had a plane there and a hangar, and it was called the Four Aces, and John knows about that. So we had a lot of aviation experience there. I loved it when I was growing up to push the plane out. It was always so cool, and go flying and watching the cows get smaller and smaller and the cars get smaller. And each city was very distinct. There was a lot of space between each city. To fly at Christmas time was amazing to see all the Christmas lights, and so it was a thing that was important to our family. My dad, his was a Cessna, and I loved it when he'd get on the microphone and say Cessna 929 or Golf. So it's something that's stuck with us. One time when I was to a movie with my husband, we went to see Flyboys, and it's about World War II and kind of planes and things that we grew up around. And I turned to him and I said, "Is there aviation fuel in here? I can smell aviation fuel." And he's looking at me, he's going, "No." But that's just the memory of growing up at the airport that came to me, was the smell of the aviation fuel. So I'd like to introduce you to my grandpa. He is it's not up. Oh, sorry. He's there, I promise, he's there.
While we're waiting, tell us, you mentioned your siblings. Who were your siblings?
Oh, so my siblings are Susan McGregor, Craig Hansen, Donna Brady, Dale Hansen, me, and then Brian Hansen and Jerry Hall.
And will you introduce your husband who's here with you
Oh,
today,
yes,
too?
my husband's here with me, Val Potter. A couple of people know him, though. That's okay. It's okay. He's my good support.
He used to sit where Ryan is sitting.
Yeah, former member of this board, former county council member.
Yeah, former
mayor,
county
Former
council.
state representative, and currently works for Senator Curtis's office. Thank you for all of your service and for being here today, Val.
Yeah, we've enjoyed working with the many different areas of the valley.
And your father's name?
What's that?
Your father's name?
Oh, my dad is Keith Hansen.
Keith
And
Hansen.
my mom was Vernee Hansen. My dad was, he was the business administrator for Cache County Schools for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, what your brother Dale did?
Dale was the Cache County School administrator, so he took over for my dad.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
We're rebooting the matrix, it takes a minute.
Okay,
For some reason, it's not recognizing the
okay. We're having some technical difficulties with the PowerPoint. We're just rebooting right now, so hopefully that'll be up in a minute.
Well, I can kind of talk about some of the stuff here while we're waiting.
Please do.
So there is a bunch of articles here. My Aunt Doreen, she had a lot of the articles, pictures, things like that, and she donated them to Utah State to the special collection. So if there's anything you want to look at, it's up there. Pictures, histories, articles, and then I also have a 16-page thing that the article the Herald Journal put together that was all about when the airport was dedicated. Oh, there it is. Yay. So there's my grandpa. His parents came from Denmark in 1889. So we've been here for a long time. But they moved up into Mink Creek, which had a big Danish community. And so they were happy up there. He was the wheat king maker, and then he made bricks. So, yeah, so we had a connection. I don't know if you've ever been up to Mink Creek, but it's beautiful up there. When my grandpa was in high school, he learned to play the banjo, the saxophone, and the violin. His true love was the violin, and he became a concert violinist. He took second place in an Idaho State competition, music competition, and won a scholarship to BYU to the music program. And so music was very, very important to him. But in 1924, when he was at BYU, he went to an air show, and it was done by Tommy Thompson. And my grandpa's love changed to aviation when he saw Tommy Thompson fly, doing all of his aero acrobatics and things like that. But 3 months into my grandpa's schooling at BYU, his father died. So he had to leave school and go back to the farm. So that was really, really hard on him. But in 1927, he went and took lessons in Salt Lake from Tommy Thompson. So Tommy Thompson was a big part of my grandfather's love of aviation. This is a picture of my grandpa's aviation scrapbook. And in it, this is up at the archives at USU. It has articles about the Wright brothers, Amelia Earhart, all kinds of different things about planes. You know, that's how people do now in electronics on Google. He had to do it like this, and it's a cute little scrapbook, and I think it is such a treasure to have something like that. He also met my grandma that year, and they ended up getting married in 1928. And they purchased a farm up in Mink Creek. And so my grandpa worked his farm, he had his crop in, and my grandpa could tell he was not happy. He was pretty sad. So she said, let's sell the farm, and my grandpa went and bought, it was a bright red Eagle Rock plane. And so he was thrilled with that. My grandpa loved the excitement and the thrill of the aerials, you know, doing the upside downs and the spins, and he just loved that. He thrived on that. So he did barnstorming, and he also did it with Tommy Thompson. They did air shows together. And my grandpa used to take off from, there was a flat area in River Heights is where he would land and take off from. So that's kind of how he started. And when Tommy and Thompson and my grandpa did air shows together, they flew all over Utah and Idaho. And then in 1930, my grandfather started the Hanson Flying Service. And so he would take people on flights just to see, or he would fly them somewhere if they needed to go somewhere. He also taught people how to fly. So that was kind of the starting of that. Then in May 19th, 1938, the first airmail was delivered to Cache Valley. So they started it in Preston, and my grandpa wrote a letter to himself, and it's postmarked from Preston on that date. And so he flew it to himself, flew the airmail there himself, and then as he stopped in each town, the mayor was there, the council was there, the bands were there, the citizens were there to see this plane come in and out and flying the airmail around, and he went clear to Salt Lake. Then in 1928, the Logan Airport was started with 84 acres in a cow pasture and one hangar. And then by 1940, it was enlarged to 423 acres for the civilian pilot training program with the help of, this is what's interesting, it was the Chamber of Commerce that helped start the airport, make it bigger. It wasn't the county council, it wasn't the Logan City Council, it wasn't anybody else but the Chamber of Commerce, because I think they could see the value in having air flight coming in and out. And that was the beginning of the USU aviation program. In the 40s, they had the civilian pilot training program. They would have students at Utah State, they would bus them down to the airport. They would take their flying lessons, and then they would go back up to Utah State to do their other classes. They had women learning the mechanics of the airplanes. And so this was quite an important program, and there weren't a lot of them around. And so it was an important program to have, and my grandfather helped get that program going. Then there were students from all over that came to Logan-Cache Airport to learn how to fly for the war, World War II. And then here, him and other pilots taught 3,800 students how to fly for World War II. And so this was really an important place that was used for the war. In 1942, November, they had the dedication of the airport, and I have a copy of the Herald Journal article. They did a 16-page Herald Journal article, and it all talks about aviation, talks about my grandpa, things that were going on. Different businesses put in ads congratulating the airport and congratulating my grandpa, so it was really important. And on the first page, it says, "Credit and honor is given to those far-seeking citizens who conceived the plan and developed the ideal of a modern Cache Valley landing field." And then after the war, my grandpa managed the airport from 1946 until 1972. So when the weather was on the news, you didn't mess with him. He watched the barometer, he watched all these different things daily. And so they didn't have quite the technology back then, but you just didn't mess with him, but those things came around. So it was very important to him. So this is a picture of my dad, who on the wing of my grandpa's biplane, the Eagle Rock. And so when my dad got his license, he had done all the training with my grandpa, so he knew how to do aerials, he knew how to do all that. He was only 14, but when he went to get his license, they asked him how old he was, and he said he was a freshman. So they didn't know that when he was younger, he was tested at school, and they moved him ahead 2 grades. So he wasn't supposed to get his license till he was 16, so technically he was a freshman, but he was only 14, so he didn't tell them that. But my grandpa and my dad did air shows together. So that was something that they loved. This is a picture of my dad and my grandpa together, and then the other picture is my dad and my uncle Brent, his brother, and that's my dad's plane. See, this says 9er29er Gulf right there. This is the one that I always loved. He would let us steer once in a while, but usually not too very often. But it was just something that was just an amazing experience every time you went up in the plane.
Is that you?
No, that's my little cousin. In 2018, there was a student at USU in the aviation program, and they did a special display in the archive down in the basement of the library, and they put out a bunch of things that were my grandfather's. And these things are still there, and that's his flight suit that he had. That's his Civil Air Patrol aviation cap, and my dad was thrilled to get a picture of him with the cap on. So that's pretty cool. Aviation has continued into our family. I have my grandpa has 2 great-grandsons that are still in aviation. This one is Kirk Smith, and he is currently in South Korea, stationed there. He graduated from USU in the aviation ROTC program, and he is a major in the U.S. Air Force. He's stationed in South Korea, and he's flying F-16s. And then this is the other great-grandson. This is Andrew Hansen, and he took lessons at the Rocky Mountain helicopter service that's there at the airport. So both of those great-grandsons learned here at USU and also at the airport to continue to fly with our legacy. The Hansen family descendants are so proud of Floyd Hansen's dream he made into a reality. This airport stands as a testament to that dream, the present and the future of the Logan-Cache Airport and the Utah State University Aviation Program. So, as you can tell, this is something that our family is very proud of. We've always said the airport should be named Keith Hansen's Airport, but you can't do that. I mean, that would be a dream of my aunt's, but you know, she's gone now. My dad's gone, and my Uncle Brent are gone now. But I have all of this stuff because my aunt saved it, and I now have access to all of this. This is stuff I just got from a box from my uncle probably a year ago, and so I didn't have a lot of this stuff. But so this is a lot of things that are very important if you want to come and take a look. My grandfather, this was done, the big poster was done, I don't even know how many years, and we don't even know what it was done for. But he gave it to my sister. And so I'm going to take that down and get a copy of that made, the big poster. But so aviation is a very important part of our family history. And so I appreciate you letting me speak. Is there any questions or anything you want to know?
So was your grandfather, they built the tower when he was there,
Yes.
when they were there
Yes.
and everything?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Will you go back to the first slide, hit the home button maybe?
The very first slide?
We missed the very first one.
Let me try and get there.
There we go.
Yeah. So that's my grandpa and my grandma. She was the secretary of the board, the airport board, and then that's my dad.
Wow.
So,
That's
yeah.
very cool.
Thank you so much for that presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any questions for Nancy?
Yes.
I don't see why we can't name the airport the Floyd Hansen Airport, or at least the tower. We should maybe discuss that on a future agenda. Thank you so much. What a rich history and what a great impact your family has made on the airport. Thank you for sharing that with us. There were a couple of other displays at the air show. One of them was a pop-up display, stand-up display. Who owns that one?
Okay, that student in 2018 that Nancy talked about was Landon Wilkie, and that was his master's project, and he gave it to me to be able to use. And I'll be able to bring that and display that another month, maybe in September's meeting when I'm back in
Okay, and then in the STEM fair area, in that hangar where the STEM fair was, there was also a display there that had poster boards with information from each decade. Does Leading Edge own? We put those together. Wow, that was impressive too. But I'd really love to put all that stuff together in one place.
Like the archive?
Well, like a museum, like a
I think
display.
it'd be fun to have the tower become that museum and show different years and be able to display, if we could clean up the inside of that, now that we have the glass on and we have some others. I think it'd be fun to be able to take and be able to start putting in on the different floors of that building, different years, different history, and be able to see that. And then obviously at the top floor being at the current year or the current condition and be able to look out. I got the opportunity on Saturday to go up in the tower and look out those windows and take some pictures. And the view of that is an amazing view. It's a fun spot. And I think if we could take and continue to not necessarily restore it as a tower, but restore it as somewhat of a museum, and that, I think it'd be really cool. It would give it a place to house some really cool history of what that airport is. So.
Yeah, I agree. There's a story to be told here that I think many people don't know, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure that story is told about the airport, about how it came to be, about how it supported things like the war effort, how it supported our economy. I love the idea of finding a place like the tower and putting these things on display.
Mr. Chairman, I had a proposal several years ago about a historic building at the airport, or a multi-use facility with a museum on the second level that I could dust off and present to the board in a couple of months again.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, thank you. So that kind of leads into our next item on the agenda, which, if Casey, you'd come back forward, an update on that tower and the remodeling efforts that have been ongoing there.
So, speaking of the tower, sounds like some of y'all have seen that we finally have the glass up and in place. That was completed just in time for the air show to be able to put that nice new tower on display. This morning, they are starting the work on the roof. We have taken off the old obstruction lights that were up there. We were given the option of having them put back up after the roofing work is completed. However, if we were to do that, we would have to put holes through that membrane that is keeping the roof waterproofed. And if we wanted to do that, we could, and they could silicone around the mounts for that. However, we'd be required to get up there about every 2 years to maintain that waterproofing. So we decided to leave the obstruction light off, and we have an idea to restore it, make it look nice again, and get it back into working order electrically, and save that, and possibly put that on display somewhere as a historical piece.
Is it required? It's not required?
According to our ACM, the only obstruction lights that are required are on top of the tower that's attached to Leading Edge's hangar and our rotating beacon. That obstruction light that was on the old tower is not listed as a required obstruction light. And in fact, I don't think it's worked in quite some time anyways. At least in Bob and I's memory, we can't remember the last time we saw that lit up. We're not getting rid of it. So if in fact we do end up needing it, we will still have it. But for now, our plans are to save it and restore it.
It was an obstruction light and not an old beacon light.
It's actually both. So it has the red obstruction lights on top, and then in the middle it has your green and white rotating beacon light. We believe is probably an original piece from when the tower was built. And it's massive, it's huge.
Sure, we preserve the switches as well that are inside the building on the main floor.
So that brings me to my next point. So the total cost of this renovation was $39,292. That leaves roughly $8,700 left with this grant money that we received for the restoration. We have an idea of using the rest of that to restore the electrical system inside the tower. And I think that would be great to get that system restored, so that way we could possibly turn it into a museum of the airport at some point. Here pretty soon, we're going to get some of our airport employees out there to sweep it from top to bottom and just get it really nice and clean in there, so that way we could start the process of remodeling or restoring the inside of the tower.
Can we also get it painted, just like a white paint? Like
The outside or the inside?
well,
Okay.
eventually both, but the
Right.
inside is what I was thinking of, just having it, so it's kind of cleaned out and ready for maybe some of these kind of displays that
Yeah,
there's a lot of wall space to put a lot of display up in those.
yeah, and various floors to put it on too. I really like the idea of turning it into a museum.
Fly in the ointment here, but if we create a museum, it has to be accessible to everybody. And so if it's open to the public. And so that is gonna be a challenge that we will have to consider.
I think there's challenges of anything to consider, but certainly there's things to consider. I don't know that it has to, I don't know that it will be an open to everybody.
I do know there are other places.
I don't know how that will work
I
at
do
that
know
point.
there are other places where you have to, you have to be able to climb stairs and things like that. I just don't know what those,
It's
Yeah.
a repository.
yeah, it can be a repository for sure.
Yeah.
It's a historic building.
So just to wrap up my report here, the contractor is expecting the roof to be done in a day or two. Maybe some slight touch-up work inside around the window frames with paint. But other than that, they should be done by the end of the week.
And do you have an idea how much the electrical work would be?
Not at this time. It's just been a thought for now. We haven't pursued that. Obviously, we'd probably want to ask the board if that's what they would like to spend the rest of this grant money on.
You may want to look at the scope of work for our contract with them, because I think they're supposed to sweep it down rather than just haul junk.
Okay. They did go through and clean up after the demo in the very beginning. I don't know if they've cleaned it, spick and span, but we might look into that and maybe have them sweep it through one more time before they leave.
Yeah, and there are, I don't know, about 24 wasp nests up in the ceiling up top, so.
Yes.
Hopefully the wasps
But,
died.
now that we've got the windows on, it's not going to be open air anymore, so we'll take care of that as well.
I'm guessing the wasps have maybe died by now, but it's a little dangerous up top right now.
I know. I've been up there. Any other questions about the tower project from the board?
Thanks for your work on it. I like the idea of expending the additional funds that we have on some additional improvements. Does anyone on the board have any different ideas other than electrical and maybe some painting and cleanup?
It seems that the electrical's the next step, so I think we should invest in that.
The door is rather shaky.
It is.
You may want to look at improving that doorway so that the access, because I think the damage to the windows was caused by a microburst that went through that door and blew the glass out.
That would make sense. I agree. We'll add that on to our list.
Check that security.
The other possibility, other than inside, is outside. And the question would be is if there's a way to get maybe a mural painted on it. We could go to the electrical on the inside, or find somebody that might be willing to paint something and decorate the outside of the building. And that would be a question. So whether it's the logical next step, I think there are two different possible tracks for that next step in my mind. So one's internal, one's external. And I'm okay either of the directions. I just pose that there are potential different directions that could happen.
I agree.
Sounds like we need to do some more fundraising.
Or another grant, once we've got this one, we can always come back to that same source and be able to apply again.
Right.
These are some great ideas. Any other thoughts about the remodel or improvements to the tower? Okay, thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update and the work that you're doing there. That brings us down to number 5 on our agenda, which is our next scheduled board meeting, scheduled for Thursday, August 7th, here in this room at 8:30 a.m. And if there is nothing else that needs to come before this board, we will stand adjourned.